Blessings, good evening. In not many days from now, it will be the beginning of the annual rains retreat for the monastery, the community. And that's the same for Buddhist monks and nuns all over the world, wherever they are. It's part of our Vinaya training, or monastic training. Although the reason the Buddha made a rule that we should stay in one place for 3 months during this time of the year came about because monks were wandering around the countryside during the rainy season, trampling on people's rice plants, because they were so used to moving around, and that was the lifestyle, partly because they were gathering cloth to make robes, because in the old days monks had to walk around collecting scrap cloth, and also just moving from forest to forest. The Buddha made that rule that they should stop that for at least 3 months of the year, because it's not the best time to travel because of the rains and don't want to disturb the farmers. But also perhaps he had the vision to see that it's good for a monastic community to slow down or stop certain activities for at least 3 months of the year. So to reduce the amount of traveling and other activities, and concentrate maybe more on the practice of meditation, training in the precepts, listening to Dhamma, studying the Dhamma, learning chanting, contemplating the meaning of the Dhamma, and so on. So that will take place, or begin soon. It's also traditional before the rains retreat that we have ordinations, so ordination of new anigarikas, 8 precept trainees, novices, monks. That comes about through the people coming forth with the intention they want to, you might say, increase the level of commitment to the practice of Dhamma in the monastic setting and using the monastic training. So everyone who comes to stay in the monastery overnight, whether it's one night or indefinitely, the beginning or the minimum training that one takes on is the training of the 8 precepts. So even if you're not yet a fully ordained monk or nun, if you're a 8 precept trainee and you give up a lot of activities, of those worldly activities that people do at home, entertainments and sports and eating in the evening, all kinds of things, which may not necessarily be evil or bad in themselves, but they certainly complicate life. So when you come into the monastery, whether you keep 8 precepts, 10 precepts, or all the rules and precepts of a Buddhist monk, one thing you're doing is streamlining your lifestyle, taking on a more simple lifestyle based on living simply for modest means, because we no longer have an income. You're no longer going out to earn money. So of course you become dependent on alms, gifts, what the wider lay community are willing to share with us to survive. So we learn to be simple in our needs. Or as Ajahn Chara, our teacher, used to say, we learn to eat little, sleep little, talk little, meditate a lot. Meaning we no longer have an income, so we're now living simply in the forest, simple accommodation, simple clothing, simple hairstyle. Not many possessions, just the essentials that a human being needs. But the purpose of that is to focus back on the mind, to train the mind. Because this mind is very difficult to see already, because it's invisible. How do you know your mind? Well, you can feel things, and you sense things, and you can notice different thoughts and emotions arising, passing away through your mind. But it's invisible, so we miss a lot. And you'll notice, in the lay life, in the world, we spend an awful lot of time and energy concerned with material things, earning a living, accumulating different kinds of possessions, wealth. We earn money so that we can pay the bills. We pay the bills and then we go to earn money again. All kinds of complex, intricate things we do in life. Some of them make vague sense, some of them don't make much sense at all. Like the way people live, sort of indulge for periods of time, and then you go back to cutting down. So people, they eat too much and then they diet. They work too hard and then they go on holiday and rest. And then they come back and they work too hard again, and so on. We have all kinds of complexities and suffering in the lay life. And a lot of it is based around material things and the body and comfort and pleasure, or at least seeking the means to have that. But the monastic life sets aside a lot of those issues and concerns, and you just eat one meal a day, have simple accommodations, few possessions, and lots of time available to watch your mind, basically, because it's invisible and hard to see and hard to know. We have to have the best environment to get to know our own mind. Because this is the Buddhist path, training of the mind. Even though we train our actions, our speech as well, you're also learning how your mind is the forerunner of whatever you say and whatever you do anyway. So if you're coming back to become more aware of your own mind, well, you'll also become more aware of your actions, your speech, your body, and the world around you, other people and the world around you. It all comes back to training the mind, sometimes we say training the heart. But that takes time, takes a simple lifestyle, so that's why we come and live in the forest, outside of the town and the city, even though we still have different activities we're involved with. It's all fairly low-key. So simple activities like cleaning and maintenance and sewing robes and looking after ourselves. But it's different from the world where you're constantly maybe developing knowledge, skills, going out, selling those skills, as it were, getting a job, doing things. Not that getting a job is not a good thing, and we can do many good things in the world. Service and help each other and build things and create things. But in the monastery, our main priority is focusing on our own mind to train that, which also is a kind of service, because the more you understand your mind, the more maybe you will understand other people's minds and be able to offer something to them, back to them. This is how the Buddha, our teacher, or Ajahn Chah, teacher in the modern era, lived and practiced. Ajahn Chah used to say, first you understand your own mind, and then you can go and teach others. Sometimes people get it the wrong way around. They want to teach everyone else. Maybe they've read a bit and learned something, which is good, but maybe they haven't fully understood their own mind, but off they go to teach others, and so can sometimes end up in a bit of a mess. Ajahn Chah used to talk about the monk in the time of the Buddha who actually was very wise in the sense he'd read a lot and heard a lot. Perhaps he hadn't read a lot, there weren't so many books around then, but he'd heard a lot and remembered a lot. And he thought he knew everything about the mind and meditation and the way to train and the way to practice, and he could answer all the questions very well. So he became very popular. Became popular because he was a good speaker. He could solve a lot of people's problems and doubts about the Dhamma, about meditation, the mind. But one day he went to see the Buddha, and the Buddha said, "Oh, here comes venerable empty scripture." And the monk knew immediately what he meant. He meant he'd heard a lot and could speak well, but hadn't actually practiced what he had read. And so the monk was embarrassed. He knew what the Buddha was getting at. And so he took his leave from the Buddha and decided, now is the time to study and talk a bit less and practice more. So he went off and he made this vow, I'm going to find a teacher. So in that sense, he was already wise. They often say, you're wise when you realize you need to find a teacher and you need to practice. Sometimes we think wisdom is just knowing a lot. You've read a lot, you remembered a lot, and you can talk about it well and explain it well. And that's not to belittle such knowledge or skill, but it may not yet help you really understand and tame your own mind. So this monk, Venerable Empty Scripture, went off looking for a teacher. And he said, the first meditation teacher I meet, I will dedicate myself, commit to following that teacher. But when he said teacher, what he meant was a teacher who really knows the mind, really understood how to pacify the mind and free the mind from suffering. And then he said, I'm just going to walk in one direction, because he was aware, the more doubts you have, the more different directions you'll go. Just like, someone on a computer or a phone, endlessly scrolling different teachers and talks and information here and there, but never really getting to the depths of it, and really understanding in their own mind. In those days they didn't have digital technology, but they still had knowledge of teachers and roads and paths and towns, and let's go, I'm off to this town to see this teacher, off to that teacher. So people could still spend a lot of time going from place to place. But he said, I'm just going in one direction, and the first wise, truly wise teacher I meet, I'm going to give myself to that teacher and become their student. So as luck would have it, the first little hermitage he came across, he went in, and it looked good, peaceful, quiet little monastery, well kept, in the forest. But he couldn't see any teacher around. All he could see was one novice sweeping the leaves. So he went up to the novice and he said, "Oh, is there a teacher here?" And the novice said, "Yep." "Is the teacher enlightened?" "Yep." "I am going to commit to this teacher. Take me to the teacher and I will offer myself as his student and I'm going to do anything he said." And the novice said, "Oh, well, it's me. I am the teacher." The young novice was actually enlightened. But the novice was wise already. He said, "Hold on, you want to be my student, but I don't know whether you're really sincere or not. It's not simply a matter for you to decide, I also have to decide whether I want to accept you." So he said, "If you're going to be my student, you have to pass a test first." In the old days, they'd do tests. Maybe nowadays we should have some kind of exam on Buddhism or something before people come to live in the monastery. But in those days they'd have a kind of practical test. Some places they say you have to sit outside the gate of the monastery, and when we call you in, only then can you enter the monastery. And they'd wait and see if the person was patient enough. Or when I first went to Thailand and go and stay in a forest monastery, they often, the first night, they'd put you in the meditation hall to sleep. They wouldn't give you a place to sleep yet. They just put you in the hall. So you sleep there, and a lot of monks found that scary. Often the halls had skeletons in them, hanging up for meditation objects, meditation contemplation object. Some halls had the ashes, the bones of people just kept in the hall. They're scary, dark, lonely. So that was another test. So Ajahn Chah used to do that, get people just to stay in the hall for the first few nights, see if they're really committed. But this novice, enlightened novice, said, "Well, I'm going to test you. You have to walk in that direction, pointing to the back of the monastery, and just keep walking. And don't stop till I tell you." So the monk, even though he's already a very popular Dhamma teacher, with lots of his own students, he now had to set aside his ditthi and mana, his pride, his conceit, all this self-view that, I know a lot, I am the teacher. He had to set that aside and agree just to follow this young novice, this boy, and just do what he said, which wasn't immediately going to be what you would think, is it? You wouldn't immediately just follow a boy who said, "Just walk in that direction and don't stop till I tell you." Anyway, Venerable Empty Scripture was willing to do it, so he started walking. And he walked out the back of the monastery, and the novice must have been following nearby, I guess. At the back of the monastery it's a swamp, and the forest turns into a swamp, which is not unusual. There's quite a few monasteries I know like that. They have swamps around them. So the monk starts walking out of the forest into the swamp, and of course swamps are full of mud and quicksand. And he keeps walking into the mud. He's got these fine robes on. In those days it was very rare that monks had fine cloth to sew their robes, but Venerable Empty Scripture, because he had so many students, he had very fine robes, and he's very attached to his robes, proud of these good-looking robes. Now he's walking into the mud, deeper and deeper. Gets muddy, stinky, wet, miserable. He keeps walking because he's determined to do what he had resolved. Finally, when he gets up to his neck in mud, the novice goes, "Stop." So he turns around, and the novice says, "Come back." So he comes out of the swamp, completely muddy, smelly, miserable, but he's passed the test. And the novice says, "Okay, you can stay here." And after that, the novice taught him how to meditate. Said, "Set aside all this knowledge you've gained, just put it down for now, and just do the meditation I teach you. Recollect the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. Contemplate the impermanence of your own body and mind, your thoughts and feelings, and how they arise and pass away." And eventually he became enlightened too. So his powerful resolution worked, brought him to a teacher, he followed the teacher, and he became enlightened. So maybe there's a lesson in that. It's something Ajahn Chah used to encourage and get people to see their own intention. You come into the monastery, if you really want to learn something and get something from it, you have to be sincere and you have to make your mind firm, committed to what you're doing. The more you can commit, the more you'll get out of it. As you know, maybe just in one meditation session, if you sit down to meditate but you're kind of half-hearted about it, maybe just filling in the time, they say, "Oh, we're going to meditate for an hour now." And you're sitting there, but your mind is not there. Your body is there, but your mind is elsewhere. Well, you're not really committed, are you? And a lot of meditators are like that. They sit down, say, "I'm going to try and meditate on the breath or recite Buddha." And they do it for a few minutes and then off the mind goes wandering around. And they don't really try very hard to bring it back. Maybe they even decide that's what they want to do. Have a nice little fantasy or daydream about something during the meditation, pass the time. When you're not peaceful, it's like that, isn't it? You actually give your mind something to think about. I even remember one monk came to me and he said, "When I'm angry with someone, I can sit a whole hour without moving easily. But if I'm not angry, I find it very difficult. I wriggle around and I move and I want to get up." So even a very negative state of mind, like anger or anything else, strong desires for something, or worry, can actually keep you sitting still for a long time. But it's only the body that is sitting still. The mind is lost in its anger or worry or whatever it is. So actually we're practicing to bring up commitment, this sincerity, the real interest to learn, to train the mind to learn, to see the truth or know the truth. Because that's the way you really get beyond the obstacles in the practice. We all have obstacles. We have a body that doesn't listen to us, so sometimes we have pain in the legs or the back, or we feel tired, hungry, hot, cold, all kinds of physical sensations and issues to deal with. Sometimes we're ill. And then we have a mind that won't do what we tell it. You say, "Watch the breath," and it's with the breath for 3 seconds and then it starts going off somewhere else again. That's the obstacles. But how do you get through the obstacles? Well, you have to be willing to be patient with the practice and keep putting effort in and keep going. As we just chanted, Kanti paramang tapo titika. Patience is the supreme destroyer of defilement. Defilement just means various negative mental states or the obstacles which will come up. Stress, suffering, fear, worry, anxiety, anguish, irritation, sensual desire, lust, all the different desires and states of mind that come up. We have to be very patient with them. But often just being patient, being willing to look at them, observe your mind, and learn from them, will bring you some understanding. Maybe you meditate and you see something coming up and you say, oh, I've seen this before. Maybe just becoming familiar with your own mental states, trains of thought, emotional reactions to things, doesn't take them away, but it changes your perspective to them. You know, oh, I've seen this before, I know this. I've been angry about this before, I've been worried about that, I've been fantasizing and desiring that. But if you keep watching, maybe after a while they lose some of their allure, their ability to pull your attention because you've seen them before. And that's the power of mindfulness and insight. You get to know things as they are. If you're patient enough and you keep practicing, maybe you'll notice, these thoughts, they come and go, these moods and emotions, they come and go, they're just like that. And sometimes your mind will return to peace, becomes very peaceful, empty of all the stuff that normally bothers you. If you're patient enough in your practice, you practice sitting meditation, walking meditation, and just mindfulness in the different activities you're doing, you can make your mind very clear, and the mindfulness becomes more continuous. The mind becomes more stable. It's like you've got a direction then. You're directing your attention back to watch the mind itself and the different thoughts and moods and feelings coming up. The opposite of what we're normally doing, which is just running around because we're busy and we are very active in our lives. We only notice ourselves, and particularly the mind, a little bit, or not at all. And we're always getting caught out, wondering why we're feeling a certain way. Where did this come from? Or why do I have to feel like this? Or why is my life like that? But if you keep watching patiently, learning to be able to watch your own mind, then you understand better where it's all coming from and why. And you realize half of your suffering is just nothing. It's just feelings and thoughts that come up and go. So even though in the monastery we have a lot of time, it's not wrong to study the Dhamma, learn chanting, study the Vinaya, the monastic training rules. All of this knowledge can be very helpful to start with, but it's more of a prompt for us to turn back and learn about our mind as it is, and develop the ability to witness our own body and mind as it is in the present moment. To be your own witness. Because when you're reading or listening to somebody else, you're really depending on their knowledge and their insights, which can be helpful, but then you have to turn back and witness these things for yourself, in your own way, from your own mind, your own experience. That's why you need the patience, the effort, the willingness to learn. But the monastery brings you that environment. You have supportive Sangha, you have teacher, you have Sangha, other community members to support, give you advice, be good examples, remind you of how to practice maybe, or explain things that you don't know. Then you have the peace of the environment, the physical environment, forest setting, countryside, not too many things to disturb you, a few squawking cockatoos or something, not very much. So the environment is peaceful, the community is peaceful and supportive. then you have a chance to really learn. But in the end, it's up to each individual whether they're willing to apply themselves and learn. So in a way, you could say a monastery is a place where you learn how to learn. You learn to observe yourself, you learn the Dhamma, and then you learn to see the Dhamma in your own experience, or know the Dhamma in your own experience, with a clear goal, to free your heart from the attachments, the delusions, the greed, anger and delusion that causes us suffering. So maybe I'll give you just this much instruction for now, and then in a moment we'll have an Anagarika ordination of Harley, who'll come forward and take the 8 precepts tonight. But I'll leave the teaching for now.